One of my worst fears is turning my microphone during that last song and I will be the one you can hear singing. That scares me to death. They asked me to lead singing one time on Sunday night with just a few folks here, last time they've ever asked me. Not saying anything, I'm just saying. The RCA test pattern. Now, for you younger folks, you have no idea what this offensive slide is. I don't know what all the numbers are. Why it has a Native American on it is beyond me. I don't know. All I know is, in my day, for you children of the 60s, 70s, they got replaced somewhere along in there with the color bars. But some of you know what I'm talking about. If you got up too early on Saturday morning to watch Bugs Bunny, this is what you saw. Was no Bugs Bunny until they played the national anthem. All right? Because they're going to play the national anthem before they're going to broadcast anything. If you got to stay up too late, rare occasion, to like midnight, this is what you saw. That right there. Till 6 a.m. Because we thought, because back in those days, all we had for Little Rock, I'm a Pulaski County guy, was 4, 7, and 11. That was it. Now, you had Channel 2. Nobody watching AETN, all right? Past Sesame Street and Electric Company, you're not watching PBS, nerd, all right? So 4, 7, and 11. So I was raised on Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch reruns. Only family I ever knew had AstroTurf Yard, all right? That's what I was raised on. We watched sports on Wide World of Sports. That poor man crashed off that ski jump with the agony of defeat so many times. There was no ESPN. There's none of that. Then if you were really good, occasionally, then we got the ABC After School Special. Some of you kids, you're nodding your head and you know what I'm talking about. That's pretty much where we got our morality, all right? Now, we listened in Bible class a little bit, but, After School Special, that's where you learned all the real life lessons. Because that's all we had. See, in the 50s, when television got really big, we actually labeled it the devil box. It's terrible. And it's true. You know as well as I do, the stuff it can spill into your house, it makes you shudder. But there it is. Okay? And this is not a lesson on anti-television. That's not what this is about at all. But that's kind of the way we label it. Now, interesting enough, I'll throw this total side note, the Barna Christian Research Group released a study from about 6 months ago that said one of the biggest demographics for television watching is church-going, that's their phrase, church-going Christians. One of the largest television watching demographics. So, we may think it's the devil box, but there it is. But long gone are the days of 4, 7, and 11. Now the average household has 189 television channels. The average household, 189. But that's really not enough. And I'm trying to bring one generation in connection with several other generations, and I'm certainly not an authority on any of them. But in case, for those of you who don't know, that's really not the way it's watched anymore with 189 channels. These days, the biggest way to watch television is binge. You watch hours and hours and hours of the same show because nowadays, between Amazon and Hulu and Google and YouTube and Netflix, they're all about to say it, I can watch all episodes of one season of some show. Not only that, I can watch every season of some show. It's no longer, hey, what episode are you on? It's what season of Breaking Bad are you on? Or Game of Thrones, or Lost, or Mad Men, or whatever the show is that you want to watch, you can watch every bit of them. All 12 seasons, 5 million episodes all at once. And that's the way it's done. Binge watching. And the reason why this lesson kind of came to me, I was reading multiple things actually, which I'm often doing. But I read an interesting article talking about why is binge watching, it was not a Christian article at all, why is binge watching such a big thing, and it went on to the psychology of it. But the bottom line is we want to know what happens now. We can't wait. We can't wait. Heaven forbid that they do not release the next season when we want the next season released. You mean it's not on Netflix? Not yet? I've got to wait how long? Until the next episode of Pretty Little Liars? And we want to know now. We want the whole story. Somebody in the audience today, probably a fair number of people, you're either here for the first time or one of the first few times, maybe at church, at a worship service for the first time or one of the first few times in a long time, maybe ever. And so a lot of this is probably a little confusing to you, even what we've done this morning, what we're all about. I said in the welcome, fill out a prayer card. You're not joining anything. You're not committing to anything. And so you feel sort of like the person that's 10 seasons behind out of 12 seasons of some show. And everybody's talking about what happened in season this, episode that. And that's kind of the way you feel about your spiritual life. And you feel like, I don't know any of that. And I don't have time. I can't go back and watch all of this. I can't go back and catch up with all this Bible spiritual knowledge that all these people have, because apparently they know everything that's going on, these church-going Christian people, and they know it all, and they've got all the answers because they've been watching all along. Well, I'm here to tell you, that's not true. That is not true at all. Actually, my mom texted me this week, and she said, you know what happened this week? She said the year, and I had to think, and I'm going, she's always texting me this kind of stuff. I'll fail about 90% of the time. No, Mom, I don't. She's like, this is the week you were baptized. Okay, that's been 39 years ago. 39 years ago, I was baptized into Christ. I don't know all the answers. I don't even know all the questions. Okay? And so if you're sitting there thinking, these people got it all, no, we don't. We know Jesus Christ. Okay? So if you're that person thinking, I don't know it all, and I'll never catch up because these people don't. Okay? Because this is the story of Christ. And that takes us to 1 Corinthians 2. 1 Corinthians 2, the book of 1 Corinthians, the first letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthian people, he's trying to get across to them some problems, some issues and things they had going on. And he starts in chapter 2, he starts off by telling them at the beginning, he goes, look, when I came to you and preached Christ to begin with, he said, now I didn't use fancy words, and I didn't get all complicated, and I didn't try to talk over anybody's head because it's so huge a subject. He said, you can't get it all. You can't grasp it all. It's just massive. He said, so I talked to you real simply. And he said, you're still struggling with that. But then he gets down to verse 8 here, and he says, none of the rulers of this age understood it. They didn't understand the message of Christ because it's so vast. And they were so caught up in their own lives. He said, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. He said, they were so confused about it. They're the ones who crucified Christ. They put him to death because they didn't understand. They were confused. He says, however, as it is written, what no eye has seen, and what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. These are the things God has revealed to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. Now, see the phrase? What no eye has seen, and what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived. He said, this is what you're about to see. The message of Christ, the story of Christ, he said, nobody has seen what you're about to see. If you're searching in your life and you say, there's got to be something else to this life, and you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that is the answer. That is the answer. And you're about to be part of something like you've never been part of before. The story of Christ is the greatest story ever. Ever. And all those questions that you have and all that searching you're doing, His story is the answer. And you don't have to know all of it. You don't have to have seen all the episodes. You don't have to binge watch back and see it. He will catch you up. He will start right where you are. But He is that answer. Carlos Rodriguez writes for a website called happysonship.com, and he had this to say about the story of Christ. He said, his story is the greatest mystery, hero rescue, drama, comedy, thriller, friendship show of all time. But the best part of his story, it can be your story. See, it's not just the story of Christ. A lot of times we want to say, here's the message of Christ. There it is in the Bible. That's the story of Christ. And I will say, that's the beginning of the story. That was His physical life, but His spiritual life is going on right here. His story continues. If you're in the body of Christ, you are part of that story. You're not just watching it. We're not just being entertained. We're not spectators. If you're part of Christ and you have a relationship with Christ, you're part of that story. See, there's nothing wrong with being entertained and being a consumer. But Christ is saying, be part of the story. Now, I'm going to tell you, that the story of Christ that's going on right now in our lives, another reason why I don't have all the answers, because a lot of times I think we either convince ourselves or maybe convince others that once in Christ, once you become a Christian, once you found the spiritual way, as we've been studying for 6 months, we've been encountering Jesus as our theme for the year. Once you've encountered Him, we think that everything is all easy and simple and here on earth, that's just not true. The story of Christ is raw. It's unedited. But it's amazing and perfect. Because it's real. It's real. And because it's amazing and perfect, He said, look, life here can be tough. But the ending is awesome. It's awesome. Now again, there's nothing wrong with being entertained. I watched the television too. Reynolds and I went and saw Jurassic World. Okay, the other day we went and saw. I took Reynolds. I know I'm a bad parent, and several times I told Reynolds and said, "Look, if it gets scary, you don't have to watch." And he's like, "Yeah, I saw you doing that, Dad." I'm like, "Hey, dude, Dad, why you keep jumping?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm just telling you, showing you it's okay." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." I'm like, "Eat your popcorn, son. Those dinosaurs are big, all right?" And jump out. And so, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't just be a consumer. Don't just be entertained. Get in the story. And that's what Christ wants you to do. The other, probably fairly large group of people that's here this morning are those like myself. I told you I've been a Christian for a long time now. And those like myself that, you have any of those movies that you're flipping channels, you're surfing? You got it down to an artwork, This is the ones I'm going to hit. You ever have those movies, if you hit on one of those movies, you stop every time. Doesn't matter what part of that movie it is. There's certain movies you're going to stop every time. Or maybe it's an episode of a show. There's an episode of, Gilligan's Island that the professor builds an atomic suit out of coconut shells, and yet they can't get off an island. I don't understand that. But, there's certain episodes you're going to watch every time. I'll tell you one of mine, Jeremiah Johnson. I could watch that some of y'all are going, I've never even heard of that. It's an old Robert Redford movie. He goes up in the Rocky Mountains. I could quote the whole movie. It's really not that great a movie, but I'm like a bug to a light. And I'll stop and watch it. And poor Karen will go, "Are you watching that movie again? Don't we own that on DVD?" That's beside the point. It's on the television. I have to watch it. I'll tell you another. Sahara, the Matthew McConaughey movie. It's an old Clive Cussler book. They made it into a movie. Not that great a movie either. But I'm like a bug to a light. I could watch it every time. Could quote it to you. All right, one of my favorite lines out of that is his little sidekick every time. But right before he punches somebody, he goes, "Hi, how are you?" And then he punches him every time. I don't know why that's funny to me, but it's funny. And I watch it every time. You have those? But is that the way your Christian life is going? You're watching the same episode over and over and over and over again. Not really changing anything. You could quote it. You show up for church. You kind of do the Bible class thing occasionally. You listen to the message so you think you're spiritual in your car. But that's about all there is to it. You're kind of numb. Because you're not really in the story anymore. Because you just keep watching the same episode. It's time to move on. Jesus said there's more to it than that. And somebody I read recently, and I searched and couldn't find it, somebody read recently and said, our problem is we're so numb, or we're so in a rut, is actually what they said. We've kind of taken the message of Christ and kind of turned it into suggestions for ethical living. Suggestions for it. Well, it's a good way to live, but I'm not really buying into it. I'm not part of it. I'm not joining that. I'm not committed. Suggestions. And I think that's probably where that may be the largest group here this morning. And I'm one of them. It's time to quit watching that same episode. It's time to be part of the story. You know, have you ever looked up? This happened to me yesterday morning. I got up and I was going to do some reading for the lesson today, and I was kind of rereading back through some stuff, and I turned over to 1 Corinthians. I was going to reread this, and I accidentally turned to 2 Corinthians. You ever done that? You turn to the wrong book, and you begin reading the chapter and verse that you thought you were on, and you're like, well, this is not looking good for the lesson because I don't even know where I'm at, you know. And so you start reading the wrong, but you know what 2 Corinthians 2 verse 8 says? Sometimes the Spirit puts you in the wrong book. 2 Corinthians 2 verse 8 says, reaffirm your love for Him. And I was thinking about this point in the message, about getting in the story. Those of us that have watched all the episodes, but somehow we're stuck. Reaffirm your love for Him. Reaffirm your love for Him. If you'll do that, He'll pick up your story with His story again, and He'll move you on. Mike Yaconelli, out of his book, Dangerous Mind, says this: I want a lifetime of holy moments. Every day I want to be in dangerous proximity to Jesus. I long for a life that explodes with meaning and is filled with adventure, wonder, risk, and danger. I long for a faith that is gloriously treacherous. I want to be with Jesus, not knowing whether to cry or to laugh. That's how powerful the story of Christ is. That's where we need to be. You say, what's your relationship with Jesus Christ? Well, if it's not so powerful that it consumes you daily, then maybe you're kind of like me and you're a little bit numb. And it's just a routine. You say, well, I need to stir it up. Well, reaffirm your love for Him. Get so close to Him that you're overcome with emotion daily. Daily. You know, when Paul writes to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 2, he's actually quoting from Isaiah chapter 64. And Isaiah in chapter 64 says, there's coming a day where people are going to see things. They're going to hear a message. They're going to witness things that the earth has never seen before. But he also says, we are filthy rags. Filthy rags. And yet this message, this story that the earth, the world has never seen, never heard, never witnessed before, this Son of God that is coming, does not see us as filthy rags. He saves us. He said, we glow like white linen because of His blood. That's what Isaiah says. And that's the message that Christ wants you to hear today. No matter what group, no matter where you are, I mentioned in the welcome, if you filled out a prayer card and you turned it into the baskets, awesome. We'll get that in the hands of people that are going to lift you up in prayer. If you need more, if you need physical contact with somebody, there's going to be leaders down front where we're going to sing in just a moment. You don't have to come down there because that may be too awkward for you. You can grab one of those guys afterwards. You can tap somebody on the shoulder down the pew. You can see somebody back here at Levy Central, the central desk back here, and you say, here's the things I got. I need some answers. And we're not the answer book, but God is. And Christ will provide those. But maybe you are numb. Reaffirm your love for Him. This morning, this afternoon, tomorrow, reaffirm your love for Him. There's no better time to start to be part of His story that is your story than today. Kajana, let's sing.